Okay, hello there, and welcome to part 2 of my Dominions 4 tutorial. Now in this part, we're actually going to be talking about two things: the map and research. Now, those don't seem like very big topics, but believe me, they are. The map has a lot of bearing on what's going to happen in your game, but just basically from different things like terrain, there's different types of terrain, structures, etc, etc. And then research is really important because research is how you use magic. Now everybody always starts off with a few spells depending on your starting paths. You start off at level 0 and you get a few spells that you can cast. But once you rack up the research path, that's when things actually start happening. And that's really when things start to get a little bit insane and a little bit good fun. So yeah, anyway, we're just going to start talking about the terrain. Now, on the map, there are 4 different types of land types, and there's 2 different water types. Now, on land, you've got just normal plains, nothing really kind of interesting about them. They're completely normal, no bonuses, no negatives, and they're usually okay for supplies. Then there's forests, you can see that here. Forests, it means they have good resources, but they hinder movement. That means I think it takes double the movement points, or 1.5 of the movement points to travel across, unless they have roads. Now roads are things that we're going to come into later. Those are things you can build in your fortifications. This is your fortification here. We'll go into that later as well. Don't you worry about that. So, you've got normal plains, forests, then you've got farmland. What am I talking about? There's only 4 different types of terrain. There's 5 different types of terrain. So yeah, you've got farmland, and what that does is it gives a high income and low resources. We'll go into income resources in a second. There are mountains. Actually, this is a good one because this is a double whammy, because in this one we have got mountains, or not mountains but borders mountains, which gives you low income and excellent resources. Mountains can come in 3 varieties, either border mountains, mountains. Is this a mountain? There we go. That's a mountain. So border mountains don't hinder movement. Mountains do. So they give you a low income, excellent number of resources, but they hinder movement. Border mountains don't hinder your movement, but still give low income but excellent resources. Now the last one is a swamp. And what a swamp does is that gives you very low income and hinders movement. So all of those things hinder movement. True mountains, swamps and forests, they all hinder movement. Now you might be wondering, why would I ever want to go in there? I'll get into that in a minute, don't you worry. But in the sea is actually a lot easier. In the sea, you can have just normal sea, and then you can have deep sea. And what deep sea does is gives you a lower income, and that's kind of it. Sea's a bit more samey than on land, and it's one of the reasons why I find that sea civilizations are slightly not as good as land nations. Now, remember I was saying, like, why would I ever want to go into, like, say, a forest or a farmland or anything like that? Well, the farmland, you could see why, because it gives you a high income. Now, in terms of income, so what income is the amount of gold that you're going to get every single month. So at the start of the month, you get a certain amount of gold, and you can spend that on what you want. You can spend money on troops, you can spend money on mercenaries, constructing temples, fortifications, etc, etc. Now, there's another thing you need to do when you recruit troops, and that's use resources. Now, you get a limited amount of resources, and each troop type costs a different number of resources each. So you need both gold and resources, usually, to make troops. Sometimes you don't, sometimes there's special things, but those are usually what you need. So those are the 2 most important things you can get out of a province, are your income and your resources. Now, usually, that's all kind of based on population. The higher the population, it gives a higher income and a higher resource value. You can see it at the bottom there. Now, that's really, really good, especially high populations, for if you're going a blood hunting nation. For example, if you were going early age Mictlan, for example. Having higher populations in a province means that you're going to get a lot more blood slaves per turn in that province, if you're doing blood hunts, of course. Now, you don't have to worry about that if you're not doing blood hunts, it's completely fine. Now, as well as that, there's a few other things that go on in the province. You've got supplies. Supplies are the number of human-sized troops that can be fed in that province. Now, things like giants take more supplies than humans. Things smaller than humans take less. Magic creatures sometimes take none at all. Some creatures actually give a supply bonus to wherever they are. Some magical items give supply bonus as well. But if your units are ever above, see the thing here, supply usage 36. So if your units are ever above with their supply usage, then there are supplies in the territory, your troops will start to starve to death. And they're going to start taking, you know, hits, they're going to be weakened because they've not been eaten, etc, etc. If they go for many months without that, they're going to start getting diseased, and when they're diseased, they're going to start wasting away. You know, they're going to have a lot less hit points, they're going to start getting afflictions, you know, they might lose an arm because they haven't eaten recently, that kind of thing. You know, gangrene, they haven't got enough medical supplies. That's the better way to think of it. It's not just food, it's things like medical supplies, ammunition, all of that jazz. Although I don't know if it actually affects ammunition, but we'll just say it does. You know, anything that you need to keep an army on the road, you aren't getting. So yeah, it's crucial to make sure that you have supplies in certain places. Now, places such as marshlands have a lot lower number of supplies than anywhere else. Mountains the same. Forests have a fairly good number of supplies in them, and grasslands have a lot. And so do plains. So, you know, if you're just marching on plains and there's nothing really like, as long as you don't have a death dominion on the other side that's killing off your population, then you should be fine, because you're, you know, everywhere will be able to create enough supplies to keep your armies going. Now, as well as that, you've got province defense. Now, what province defense is, I'll just press D. So what province defense is a basic number of units that you spend gold on to sort of just defend that province. They can't be put into armies, they can't be doing anything, they can't be scripted, but they're just there to kind of like patrol around the province to make sure that everything's fairly alright. And then you can see there you've got this thing called Unrest reduction, 2 per month, and patrol strength. So patrol strength means that it's easier to find stealthy units once you get over to 15. Now, Unrest is how happy your people are, or how unhappy your people are in that certain province. Now, high unrest can cause you to get less taxes, which means you get less money in the income, because what happens is unrest calculations are done before the tax calculations are done at the start of the turn. So if you have anything that increases unrest, for example, some brigands attack, or someone's insinuating a rebellion, or you're blood hunting in a province, they will all raise your unrest. And when your unrest raises, you get less taxes at the start of the turn from that province. So it really does affect your gold gain, especially if you do it in somewhere like your capital. I don't really like blood hunting in your capital too much, because that's your like almost main source of income. And once you get over to 100 unrest, you can't recruit troops anymore, and there's a high chance you can get bad things happening that cause rebellions against you, and you just really do not want that. Now, remember how I was saying, like, you know what, you maybe want to go in and have your marshlands, you know, but why? You don't get any bonus gold. In fact, you get terrible gold for it. You don't get any bonus resources. It hinders movement. Why would you ever want that? In each different province, there's a chance of there being a magical site. Now, when it comes to things like deep sea zones, or marshlands, or mountains, you've got a much higher chance of getting magical sites. There is actually another land province I've forgotten to mention, which is wastes, and wastes pretty much are exactly like marshland. Wastes and marshlands are two of the best places to find magical sites in the game. They're where you're most likely to find like your most powerful sites and the most number of sites, just because of how the site generation works. Generally, the worse the province is for things like golden resources, the better it's going to be for magical sites. Now, next, of course, is forests and mountains. Both of them have got quite an alright chance of getting magical sites. Not a great one, but alright. You've got grasslands and normal provinces. You know, there's a chance they could have a nice magical site, but it's not very high. You're most likely to find magical sites in these places here. See this throne? This is a province with a throne of ascension in it. Now, what that means is this is the place where kind of a throne is set, and it's a really important, powerful place to take, because the throne will obviously give you some bonuses. Also, it increases the amount of kind of magic around it, because it's like this throne that's really important in this province. It increases the chances of magical sites being in that province as well. So if you really want to take thrones, even if you're not going to claim them, if it's something awful for your race and you don't want to have it, you know, don't claim the throne, but search the place anyway and try and keep it as long as you can. And yeah, that's really all you need to know about kind of normal sites. Normal sea, I think, is the same as normal provinces, land provinces I should say, and grasslands. Now we get onto the meat and bones of this episode, which is going to be research. Now you can already see there's quite a few research paths, and they're all very fleshed out. Every single research path has 9 levels, or 10 levels in total, because you start off at level 0, so you go from 0 to 9, and any spell in that certain school of magic is going to get, it's not stronger, because it's like every spell is kind of based at a certain level, but you might get a more powerful variation of that spell, you might not, who knows. So the first one we're going to go into is Conjuration. Now Conjuration is kind of the magical path of summoning monsters, or summoning creatures, elementals, dead gods, massive Tartarian beasts, you know, real creatures that can have an effect in the world, or it could be summoning like your inner earth power, or calling some animals to attack a faraway province, that kind of thing. You know, there's really a lot of different spells you can get in here. There's also things like this, the Voice of Aspu, which are, these are called sight-searching spells. I think Conjuration also where you get Archaic Knowledge, yes. Archaic Record and Archaic Knowledge. Where is it? Is it this one? Oh, maybe it's Thaumaturgy. No, there it is, Archaic Knowledge, there it is. And, you know, Conjuration has quite a few sight-searching things. We'll get more into sight-searching when we go into Thaumaturgy. So yeah, Conjuration is mostly about, you know, either summoning some sort of inner power, or summoning, you know, creatures to obey your bidding, or summoning things to attack something that's not directly under your control, but, you know, they're kind of sent against your enemies. You can tell them where to go and they'll attack that province. So that's really what Conjuration is about. It's a very strong path. All paths, I think, are exceptionally strong if used with the right race. Now, before we go on any further between the paths, I should probably explain the difference between battle magic and ritual magic, and a little bit more about research as well. So, battle magic is magic that's done in battle. Now, all battle magic causes fatigue. Let's see, we'll go into Tangle Vines. Here we are. Okay, so all battle magic, pretty much all, has a associated fatigue costs, a number of effects, a certain number of magic level to cast such a thing. So for example, like the Tangle Vines thing costs 1 nature, no sorry, doesn't cost, you need at least 1 level in nature magic before you can cast it. It also costs you 20 fatigue. Now how that works is, the more paths you have beyond the required path of, so say if you had a level 3 nature mage, you would take a lot less fatigue casting Tangle Vines than a level 1 nature mage, and that's because he's a much more skilled practitioner in the nature magic. Now I don't think it actually doesn't matter if you have, like, say somebody who's got 1 nature and 3 fire. That doesn't matter, because this is all about them casting nature magic when it comes to Tangle Vines. If they were casting a fire spell, I think they would take, is it half fatigue for having 2 levels above, or is it a quarter of the fatigue? I can't exactly remember, I'm very sorry, but when you're scaling your mages right, fatigue isn't too much of a problem. It can be a problem if you're using them for very big spells. Some battle magic spells do require you to use magical gems, just because they are so powerful that you need to kind of fuel them with gems, otherwise you'd just be able to spam all the time. I think Light of the Northern Star is one, yes. Okay, so Light of the Northern Star, it costs you 200 fatigue to cast. It's at level 3 astral spell, so you need to be at least a level 3 astral mage to cast it. It's going to cost you 200 fatigue and 2 astral gems to cast. It's pretty much going to wipe out that caster because they're going to be so fatigued they're not going to be able to do anything anymore. Now, you can, with battle magic as well, not only just being better skilled in spells, you can also use gems to try and lower the fatigue. Every gem that you use kind of like decreases the fatigue it takes to cast a spell. So you could use 4 Astral Pearls, for example, with this Light of the Northern Star, and you should probably be fine. You can probably cast a few more spells. I don't have the exact numbers on that, unfortunately, but you know, it is in the manual. Don't always trust the manual, what it says. Sometimes the manual is just wrong, but it's the manual at the end of the day. I mean, there's been a lot of changes since the manual first came out, so you know, you can't always trust everything it says, but you've got to kind of try. Now, ritual magic is things you do on the kind of the month screen. So battle magic stuff you do in battles, where you'll script your mages before going into battle. We'll go more into scripting when we go into our army segment, which is going to be next episode, so look forward to that. Yes, once we go into that, we'll go into more into scripting and stuff like that. But ritual magic is things that almost always cost gems, pretty much almost 100% of the time, unless it's certain special things. For example, I think Will-O-Wisp is one. No, that's a battle one. My bad. Some Springhawks. Yes, here we have ritual. So the ritual ones are more about kind of like summoning either large numbers of troops, or conjuring some sort of ritual searching, or causing hellfire to rain down a province. They're like massive area spells, maybe even global enchantments. So ritual spells, they mean that you use your entire turn for that month. It costs 1 turn to cast a ritual spell. You can't use any temporary gems, which can be made by forging magical items. We'll go into that in a much later tutorial thing. You don't need to worry about temporary gems just now. They almost always cost air gems, or like more gems than battle magic. For example, this one, it binds 5 Springhawks, and it costs 20 earth gems for this one spell. Oh, excuse me, oh my, I think I'm very tired. So yeah, it costs 20 earth gems, or air gems, for 1 spell. Now, these are spells that can have a huge effect on everything. So let's see, we could do something like the King of Banefire. So what that does, it costs 50 death gems, and the caster calls upon the supernatural forces of fire itself, and summons Anthrax, the King of Banefires. So you're going to have a really powerful commander for 50 death gems, and you got to kind of wonder, is it worth me to summon such a thing, or isn't it? You know, it's really up to you at the end of the day. It's 50 death gems, that's a lot for one commander, but if you kit that commander out, he could be nigh unstoppable. So yeah, when it comes to research, I'm sorry if you can hear the paper flapping about. I've got to try and look at my notes as best as I can. When it comes to research, every turn that you have your mages doing action called research, they give a certain number of research points. Now that depends on the mage. There's certain skills in magical paths. If they have any magical items to boost it, if you have a drain or magic scale, they depend how much your individual mage will give in terms of research points. Now, research points are given out with these sliders. You know, if you had 7 research points going, and you were putting them all into evocation, we'd be getting 7 research points a turn. Now, to go up every level, it costs a certain number of research points. To go up to level 1 in a path, it costs 50 research points. I think level 2 is it 150 or 100? I cannot remember. But yeah, it gets more and more for every level, obviously, because you get unlocking more and more powerful spells, or spells that can do a lot more different things. So research points are a really important part of the game. Some nations research a lot faster than others. Some nations research very slowly. Some of them, you know, their mages cause bad effects in the provinces they're in. You know, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's really up to you. Do you want to just focus more on troops and just bashing your way through into, you know, victory early game? Do you want to focus on sacred troops, like very small numbers of really buffed up troops that will go in the front line and be able to take out 10 men for every single one of them and keep fighting till the next day? Or do you want to try and go really mage heavy and get lots of research points, get loads of spells together, cause massive, you know, earth-shattering earthquakes and buff your troops to levels they've never seen before? It's really up to you how you want to play Dominions. Now, different nations have better things they're better at, but every nation can be played in a certain way. It just really depends on their magical paths and your pretender's magical path. Oh, yes, I am very tired today. I'm obviously not breathing enough, that's the problem. I'm just talking so quickly. I'm trying to give out all this information. But yeah, all magical buffs and stuff depend on your pretender's magical levels and the magic that you get out of the troops you can recruit in that nation. We'll go on to that next time. Don't worry about it for now. Just now we got to focus on research. Now the next magical path is alteration. Now alteration is a weird one because it's usually battlefield buffs or debuffs or disables. For example, you can cast false fetters, so that forms fetters, which are like kind of chains, around the ankles of some of the enemy units, and they won't be able to move or fight until they've managed to overcome the magic. That's one of the disables. You know, it's quite a low level one, but you know, it's alright. It, you know, takes a couple of troops out of combat. They're not able to move, they're not able to attack. I think they get a defense penalty for not being able to move. So, you know, they're easier to take out, they can't harm your troops, and, you know, it's all good. There is also aim. So, what that does is it gives you kind of like a cast on a certain number of troops and increases their precision, which means it's easier for them to hit targets with bows or spells. And so that's what we mean by buffs. You know, you're buffing your troops' stats, and we'll get more into stats next time. That'll be when buffs and debuffs become more obvious and more useful. They've got alteration's got a few, you know, offensive spells like Hands of Death. The left hands of the caster becomes deadly and destroys anything it touches, and it's enough to basically kill giants. Pretty much able to kill almost everything. Just 40 magical damage. That's quite a lot, and it doesn't matter about armor. We'll go more into armor and damage types next time. Oh, it's very annoying to have to like keep saying that, but you know, we'll get there. It's all right. So yeah, you've got different kind of things, you know, debuffs, buffs, disables, all that sort of thing. Another example of a buff would be something like, a debuff would be Armor of Achilles, and that destroys the target's armor. That's really useful against really tough units. Let's have a look at another one. Curse of Stones. This is like curses the enemy armor, or enemy army, with a weight of earth and stones. And what it does is it means that all the effective units are severely burdened, and they'll take more fatigue every turn, and when you take too much fatigue, you'll pass out. So that's a really good spell right there. It costs 3 earth gems to you know, deal with, but you know, it's got special things like magic resistant negates easily, which is one of the reasons why magic resistance is very important. We'll get more onto this next episode. Urgh. Yeah, sorry. I guess we can go into some sort of little tirade about magic resistance. So what magic resistance does is it lets you kind of basically resist against certain types of magic that aren't based on elemental damage, that are all based on magical damage or magical effects. You've got a chance to be able to resist that, either take less damage or reduce the effects, or take no effect at all. And it's a really good spell. Or not spell, sorry, it's a really good stat to have. You know, the more tanky, the more able your troops are able to withstand damage, the more your mages on your side will be able to cast at the enemy, because there'll be more troops as buffers between them. So, you know, if you can win the buffer war, you can kill the mages. If they win the buffer war, they can kill your mages. If you kill their mages in a battle, then you can destroy their buffer. If they destroy your mages, they're probably going to destroy your buffer. That's basically how it works. And alteration, you know, it's got a few interesting things like turning your troops to stone, transforming something, you know, changing the battlefield, so like darkness. The battlefield's covered in complete darkness, and it means that anything that doesn't have dark vision or doesn't need to see at all will have their stats reduced, because they won't be able to see anything. They won't be able to, you know, they've got to kind of go with their hearing and their sense of touch. They can't use their eyes, so obviously they're not going to be able to hit things quite as well, or defend. Because, I mean, how do you defend against a sword if you can't see it? You're only going from like from hearing it. You're going to have to be really skilled and know a lot about fighting to be able to predict where sword blows are going to come from. There's other things in Alteration. Alteration's a pretty cool thing. It's got things like Wish, which is a really powerful spell. You know, they can affect pretty much anything. I haven't actually ever casted Wish before because it costs 100 Astral Gems to use. So, you know, is it really worth it? There's another thing, Utter Dark, where the entire world is plunged into darkness. That's pretty cool. Like, it means that you get less income and resources. It's a perpetual night, and forces of darkness and roaming shades will attack enemy provinces, you know. Luckily, on things like undead and demons aren't affected by it, so if you're something like Middle Age Armor, that's a spell you kind of want to go for. But it's very, very late on the game. You've got more important things to worry about until then, like making sure you've got a nice, strong early game as Armor. But we're not talking about Armor just now. We are talking about magic. So that was Alteration. Then we get Evocation. Evocation is pretty much your main damage-dealing spellbook. And it's got pretty much damaging spells on every single magical path that you can think of. Like, you've got things like Magma Bolts or Freezing Mists. And you might be like, oh, Freezing Mist, that doesn't sound so bad. No, it gets a completely numbing cold. There's Mist as well. It's not really a damaging thing. That's the weird thing about Alteration and Evocation. Sometimes I think, you know, the spells can be intertwined. Or basically any path, actually. You know, the spells can be kind of entwined. It's like, why isn't Mist an Alteration? Because it summons... It alters the battlefield to create Mist. Or do you evoke Mist on the battlefield? You know, it's just kind of down to your own personal opinion. Now, when it comes to trying to remember all of these spells for your own game, probably best not to try. What you really want to do is you want to know beforehand certain spells that you'd like to rush for with your nation. Would it be a certain buff path, or would it be a certain disable, or do you want your mages to be able to cast a certain really damaging spell early, or do you want to be able to construct magical items really early? Do you want to be able to site search really early? It's really just up to you. So yeah, yeah, Evocation, mostly damaging, dealing things, a few debuffs, a lot of provincial kind of damage dealers, like you can summon a bloody well tidal wave if you really wanted to. There's a few other things like, what's Strands of Arcane Power? Oh yes, that's a really powerful one. We're not gonna worry about that, don't worry. There's other things as well, like Cleansing Water, which is really good against undead enemies. You know, different spells do different damages to certain things. Some spells are used against undead, some of them are used against demons, some of them are used against humans, some of them are better against giants, because, you know, they're more likely to hit giants because of the giants taking up a larger space in the battlefield, that kind of thing. But we're not going to get into that yet. Ugh. You know, don't worry, I'll stop saying that at some point. Now, Construction. Construction is mostly about either creating artificial constructs like clockwork units, or buffing your troops to have harder, you know, armor, or creating massive juggernauts or golems to serve your bidding. But they're mostly about creating magical items. Now, every 2 levels of construction, you get another level of magical items you can make. Now, this can be anything from, like, oh, I don't know, a dagger that ignores armor, to a spear that can pierce the heavens, you know, literally anything you want. If you get that reference, good on you. Yeah, and the more powerful the magical item, obviously, the more stuff it can do. Well, not even the more stuff they can do, either the more deadly it is, or the more helpful it is. Because you can get items that maybe don't do much damage, but they'll give your army some extra supply. The Summer Sword, for example, gives you an extra 100 supply, just from having one equipped. So that you can give one to one of your mages as a support, and he has a Summer Sword. He's not ever going to use it in combat, but every troop in that province, you know, you've got 100 more supplies. I'm kind of rambling right now, I'm very sorry, but it's alright. So yeah, Construction is, I would say, probably one of the most important paths in the game, just from the variation. You saw all the magical spells that you can get in every other level and every other path, and you might be like, well, you can only get a few construction things. Now, if you have access to almost every path, you're going to be able to create a lot of magical items, and now magical items can do many things. They can, you know, cut enemy armor, as I said. They can augment things so you get like higher armor, or you shoot laser beams out of your shield, that kind of thing. They can give you research bonuses, like research point bonuses, so that's really useful for mages. You can get things called boosters, which boost your magical paths, and they're also the way that you create things like thugs or super combatants. Now, thugs and super combatants are like they're basically commanders that don't command troops. What they do is they either fight on the front line, and they can take out a lot of the enemy's kind of like ground unbuffed troops. So you might have like a giant with a massive flaming sword that does flame damage all around him, and he's got a shield that protects him from fire. So he's really, really tough, and he's really hard to bring down, but he's dealing constant fire damage to everyone around him. So you just send him into the enemy against the enemy army, and he does a lot of damage to them for very little kind of like cost of your own. I mean, so a few gems, a little bit of upkeep costs, but it's cheaper than buying some like troops. Now those are thugs, those are kind of like low level things. Super combatants are more like things like undead titan brought back to life. And what they are, they're fully kitted out with like the most expensive magical items you can get, and they are pretty much nigh unkillable unless you're using certain mage tactics. And what they can do is, an army without mage support, say like 100 units, that can get completely wiped out by one super combatant. That's just how powerful they are. They're like gods of an old age kind of thing. Anyway, that's construction for you. I can go on length about construction. Construction is probably my favourite magical path, but that's because I play races like Ulm a lot, and you saw that in my last Let's Play. So we'll stop talking about construction for now. Enchantment's a really interesting one, because it's kind of all about buffs. It's got a few damage spells, like it's all about buffs, you know, protection from fire, lightning, you got resist magic, stuff like that, you know, regeneration, haste. It's all about kind of like enchanting your troops to do better, be able to, you know, fight harder. It has a few spells that do a bit of damage. It's probably got quite a lot of water-based. I think it's probably the most water-based path in the game. Kind of. Water gets a little bit of a bad rep, in my opinion. I feel like water could be a lot stronger. It kind of gets beaten by almost everything else. But hey, you know, I quite like water. It's got a really good bless if you start off with it, so you know, it's alright, it's alright. It's got a few gem creation spells. Now, gem creation spells are things that are ritual spells that cost a lot of gems to cast. Cost maybe like 80 gems. Cast something like that. I'm trying to find one here. Yeah, like an Earthblood Deep Well. So it costs 80 Earth Gems to cast, and I think you get maybe like 10 Earth Gems per turn, or is it 20? I can't exactly remember, but yeah, once you get to those high level enchantments, they're really, really good for increasing your gem income exponentially. Unfortunately, you can only get one of each enchantment on at a time, because they're global enchantments. You know, it's not like everybody could have their own Earthblood Deep Well, so there's a chance they can be dispelled. But that's fine, because anytime you can get, as long as it goes on for say 8 turns, if it gives you 10 gems per turn, and it costs 80. If you get going for 8 turns, hey, you know, that's paid for itself. And anything more is a bonus as far as I'm concerned. Now, yeah, the thing with enchantment is a very very magical path. You know, it's got a lot of things to do with the undead. It's got reanimation, and animate dead. So like those are is reanimation the ritual one? Yeah, so reanimation is the ritual one that summons skeletons, and then on the actual thing itself you got summon skeletons, which don't cost any gems but don't quite do as much. I think reanimation is a really bad spell. I'm just going to say that now. You might think it's quite cool. It's like, oh, I can get 10 skeletons. And it's like, well, you're getting 10 skeletons for 5 death gems. That's really not worth it. Because skeletons at the end of the day, they're just chaff. Skeletons are supposed to have, you're supposed to have a lot of them to take out an army. For 100 skeletons, you'd be having to cast or use 50 death gems. It's not really worth it. Whereas you can just cast, say, Horde of Skeletons in battle, which costs no gems, and you'll get 6+ for 40 fatigue, which is pretty bad. But you know, like, the more skeletons you want. Now, are skeletons carried over in battle after being summoned? I can't actually rightly remember, which is very bad of me. Anyway, yeah, so enchantments are really varied magical research thing. I'm just trying to think what to think about when I'm talking about these magical paths. There's so many things you can talk about. I don't want to make it too complicated for you guys, so I'm sorry that I'm rambling a wee bit. Now, thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy is sort of the magical path of mostly sight searching. Sight searching, rather. So what it does is sight searching. You can either do it on the map with your mages, or you can get them to cast monthly ritual spells to sight search for you. Things like horospecs, which like tells you about any nature sites that are in a certain area, or auspecs, which tells you or about I think it's air. Yes, air is auspecs, augury is fire, gnomelore is earth, etc., etc. So that's really useful. Other than that, thaumaturgy is mostly to do with kind of like buffs and debuffs, and the all-important communions. Now, communions are something we're going to go into much later on, if I go into it at all in this tutorial series. I might have to make a special video on communions, because they're relatively complicated, and it's something you kind of want to see in action in battle, and it's something that we can't really do with Niflheim. So I'm going to have to create like a new tutorial sort of video to show you what I mean about communions, but don't worry, it's nothing to worry about just now. That's some like maybe not high level shit, but like some fairly advanced shit that you don't need to worry about at the moment. All you gotta know is like, you know, a little bit of an idea of what every single magic path does, but the more you go into like every sort of thing and you look and see what every spell does, the more you have an idea of what you're gonna get at each level of every path. Now that sounds like a really daunting thing, but hey, that's what you signed up for wanting to play Dominions. Dominions is a really deep game, and trying to understand anything and everything that your enemy can throw at you, it's pretty much impossible. But you want to know as much as you can, because the more you know, the more chances you are of being able to counter it. Now, the final one is interesting. Every other path that we've talked about has magic from pretty much every path other than blood magic. So you know, it's got fire, air, nature, water, literally every single other path. Blood magic is all about the blood. It has a few spells that you maybe need another path in something else, like you maybe need a path in fire, you need a path in water, 2 paths in water, some astral magic, some nature magic, etc., etc. But it's all bound together by one thing, and that's blood. And the other thing, with pretty much every single, in fact I think every single blood magic spell, even the most basic one, bleed, which causes like one target to bleed out of their mouth and nose profusely, which causes them to die, you know, not particularly fun. That costs 1 blood slave. There's no such thing as a free blood magic spell. Every single blood magic spell requires you to sacrifice at least 1 blood slave. It's also probably the most varied and one of the most powerful paths in the game, just because blood magic is, I don't know, the thing with blood magic is it's really powerful once you get a blood magic economy rolling, once you're able to kind of make sure all of your commanders are stocked up with blood slaves and able to cast these horrible things like, I'm trying to think of a good one, like sort of a blood vortex. Is blood vortex the thing I'm thinking about? No, blood vortex is the thing that gains you it. It's god damn it, what is it? Things like, oh yeah, like the infernal prison. So gates open, the target's instantly thrown into the inferno, the realm of the devils, or, you know, you curse people with blood, or you call horrors from beyond the astral planes to them. You completely disease a province with pestilence and that kind of thing. You summon a succubus to seduce an enemy commander and turn them to your side. Blood magic is really cool, both thematically and in practice, but it's not really the kind of thing I'd recommend for early players, you know, because you have to be able to work with blood hunting and unrest and ferrying blood slaves and making sure that you've got the right people searching and etc, etc. It's all just kind of all catches up on you. I think you can tell that my throat's now going because I've been talking for a long time. So I think it's time to end this episode here, and we're going to head on to the next episode. So now in the next episode we're going to be talking about units and stats. It's going to be a long-awaited one. Commanders and mages, sacred units, holy points, armies, profits, and explain a little bit further about things like income and resources in terms of recruiting troops. So, I just want to say to everyone who's been watching this entire time, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the next episode, and I'll see you then. But until then, goodbye.